Britain felt the weight of war long before the world fully understood the darkness spreading across Europe, and the air itself seemed heavy with unspoken dread as families looked toward a future they could not predict, yet somehow sense would demand everything from them. Even before the bombs began to fall, the tension curled through the narrow streets like cold fog, wrapping around homes, chimneys, and street lamps covered with blackout cloth, turning familiar places into silhouettes of uncertainty. And when the first explosions finally shattered the silence, the British people did not collapse. Instead, they awakened a spirit shaped by generations who survived storms that history tried to bury them under. Mothers carried blankets and children into underground shelters, their footsteps steady despite shaking walls, while volunteers sprinted toward flames that roared like monsters born from a night. Small acts became symbols of defiance, a kettle boiling after a raid, a window repaired with tape, a child's laughter echoing between craters. Churchill's voice rolled through static-filled radios, urging his people not just to endure, but to rise in ways the enemy never believed possible. In those early months, the country discovered that resilience was not something learned. It was something inherited, a quiet fire passed from heart to heart. While Britain fought alone beneath relentless skies, the United States observed from a distance, separated not only by thousands of miles of ocean but by a sense of disbelief at the scale of destruction unfolding across an island so small on their maps. Newsreels flashing across American cinema screens showed shattered streets, burning factories, and families huddled in narrow shelters, images that pulled at viewers' hearts even if the danger felt distant. Politicians debated, strategists analyzed, and ordinary citizens wondered how long a single nation could endure such pressure without collapsing into surrender or silence. Intelligence reports arriving in Washington painted a picture of a country refusing to bow, continuing production, rebuilding railways, and powering through shortages with a determination that shocked even seasoned military minds. America saw bravery, but they did not yet understand the depth of it, not until they stepped onto British soil themselves. Amid these conversations, a growing realization emerged within American leadership. This was not a story of a nation waiting to fall, it was the story of a nation writing a new chapter of human endurance. With every passing month, admiration quietly replaced doubt, laying the foundation for decisions that would alter the course of the entire war. When American officers finally arrived, expecting to find a country broken and desperate, they instead encountered a land standing upright against the storm as if carved from stone itself. Their planes descended through thick, ash-grey clouds, revealing cities that appeared battered yet astonishingly alive, with smoke rising from factories that refused to rest even for a single night. Streets cluttered with rubble still buzzed with activity, and the hum of daily life persisted despite the fresh scars carved into nearly every block. Children played games near sandbag buildings, women cycled to work with determination in their eyes, and shopkeepers opened their doors even if half the windows had been blown out just days earlier. The Americans felt a strange mix of humility and disbelief as they watched citizens navigate war-torn streets with the calmness of people walking to a Sunday market. Britain's courage was not loud or theatrical. It was woven into the smallest routines, as natural as breathing. The visiting officers found themselves silent, absorbing a reality far stronger than any written report could ever convey. They arrived expecting sorrow, but what they found instead was strength disguised as ordinary life. Traveling through London, Coventry, Liverpool, and countless smaller towns, the Americans witnessed scenes that etched themselves into their memories forever, not because of the destruction, but because of what persisted despite it. In London's East End, families sifted through rubble searching for small keepsakes, not out of material need but out of emotional survival, proving that memory was something the enemy could never bomb away. In Coventry, where entire blocks had been reduced to twisted metal, factory workers were already constructing temporary workshops from salvaged debris so production could resume without delay. One general paused to watch a railway team rebuilding a bridge with unbelievable speed, their hands working in unison despite exhaustion visible on their faces. He later wrote in disbelief, "This is not reconstruction, this is resurrection." Everywhere the Americans traveled, they found no sign of collapse. Instead, they found a fierce determination to rise again before the dust even settled. Britain, they realized, was not waiting for rescue. It was already fighting with every breath. The Americans' understanding deepened each night as they were escorted to rooftops to witness what British citizens had survived almost daily for nearly 2 years. The nights were cold and silent at first, the moon casting pale reflections across empty streets while blackout curtains swallowed every flicker of light. Then came the distant rumble, engines approaching like a swarm of metal locusts, until the sky erupted in fiery chaos. Explosions bloomed across the horizon like monstrous flowers of orange and red, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Yet what shocked the Americans was not the violence but the response to it. Fire brigades raced toward the flames instead of away, rescue teams sprinted into smoke-filled ruins, and neighbors pounded on doors to ensure no one was left behind. Even children, awakened by the blasts, comforted younger siblings as if they had rehearsed bravery from birth. It was a nightly ritual of destruction met with routine courage, and witnessing it firsthand changed the Americans in ways they never expected. Despite the devastation, British hospitality remained intact, as if kindness itself were a weapon the war could not blunt. The Americans found themselves welcomed into tiny living rooms with cracked ceilings and taped windows, where families offered tea poured from chipped kettles with smiles that carried more warmth than any fire. One officer was stunned when a woman who had lost half her home insisted he take a second helping of biscuits, saying, "We share what we have, that's how we win." Children showed their American guests drawings they made during air raids, drawings filled with airplanes, stars, and bright colors, as if their imaginations refused to accept the darkness outside. In these homes, the Americans realized that Britain's strength did not come from its armies or machines. It came from ordinary people who held on to humanity even when the world tried to tear it away. These encounters, simple yet powerful, left a deeper impression than any battlefield could. Visiting factories opened the Americans' eyes further to the engine behind Britain's survival. They had expected operations slowed by fear and exhaustion, but instead found production lines roaring with incredible energy, run by men and women who worked with a rhythm that matched the beating heart of the nation itself. Women who once worked in offices or homes now operated heavy machinery with precision, their sleeves rolled up, faces streaked with sweat and determination. Older men who should have been resting in peace spent long hours repairing engines, forging steel, or welding aircraft parts because retirement felt impossible when their country needed them. Everywhere clanged the music of resistance, hammers striking metal, presses stamping shells, engines roaring to life in echoing hangars. One American general leaned over to another and whispered, "This is not a factory, this is a heartbeat." It was then the Americans understood. Britain survived because it worked with a purpose stronger than fear. Beyond the major cities, the Americans explored rural regions where the war's presence was subtle yet deeply felt. Fields once intended for peaceful harvests were now essential lifelines feeding millions, farmed by workers who labored from dawn until darkness without complaint. Villages turned into communities of shared responsibility, where bread, blankets, tools, and even hope were exchanged freely because scarcity belonged to everyone, and unity belonged to all. In one village, schoolchildren proudly guided the Americans through a small victory garden they had planted, each tiny vegetable symbolizing perseverance rather than food. The air smelled of soil and effort, and the Americans realized that courage here was not explosive or dramatic. It was steady, patient, and unwavering, the kind of courage that held a nation together. As days turned into weeks, the Americans slowly grasped a truth that no military intelligence report could have predicted. Britain was not simply resisting invasion, it was reshaping the war itself by refusing to break. The enemy had expected terror to cripple morale, expected chaos to spark collapse, expected fear to silence the will to fight, but nothing unfolded as expected. The people rebuilt faster than bombs destroyed, united stronger the more they suffered, and laughed harder the darker the nights became. This unshakable core of spirit turned resilience into a strategic asset, one so powerful that the enemy's calculations were rendered useless. The Americans sent home reports filled with astonishment, chronicling not just tactics but the soul of a nation that had chosen defiance over despair. One evening, the American delegation climbed a hill overlooking a city battered by countless raids. From that high vantage point, under the soft glow of the moon, they saw what no report could describe, a landscape scarred yet alive, a place where chimneys still smoked, where families gathered in warm clusters of light, and where even shattered rooftops could not extinguish the glow of life. The church bell far in the distance rang slowly, gently, as if reminding them that faith persisted even when walls fell. The Americans stood in silence, absorbing the depth of what they had witnessed during their journey. This was not a nation simply enduring war. It was a nation teaching the world how to stand when everything around you collapses. In that moment, the Americans realized that Britain's survival was not luck, not strategy, not miracle, it was will. When the American officers returned home, their testimonies changed the tone of every conversation, every meeting, every strategy session in Washington. They spoke of a nation that did not beg for rescue but deserved partnership, a nation that fought with a resolve that made every inch of its soil sacred. Their stories, of mothers surviving raids, workers rebuilding factories, and children playing beside ruins, reshaped American perception. The United States could no longer see Britain as a distant victim of war, but as a resilient ally whose spirit demanded admiration and support. Their words carried weight, sparking decisions that shifted global momentum. The alliance that would one day liberate continents began not on battlefields but in these testimonies, in the respect earned under firelit skies. As the war progressed and eventually turned toward victory, the legacy of Britain's early years stood as one of the greatest stories of human endurance ever recorded. The American generals who had walked through its bombed streets never forgot the sights, the sounds, or the unbreakable people who shaped their understanding of courage. They carried those memories with them, telling future generations about the nights lit by flames, the ordinary heroes who rose from ordinary streets, and the moment they realized they were witnessing history being carried on the shoulders of a nation that refused to fall. Britain had not just survived the war, it had shown the world how survival becomes victory when a people choose courage over fear.